Welcome to Tech in the Right Direction, the podcast. This week, I'll be speaking with Samantha Bufton. Samantha is the President and Chief Operating Officer of Poppulo. She has successfully driven transformational growth for organizations of all sizes for almost 20 years. Prior to joining Poppulo in 2022, Samantha served as EVP General Manager of Momentive AIs, formerly known as SurveyMonkey. She joined Momentive as a product leader in 2013 to architect its enterprise offering. Previously, she spent 15 years in product management roles at Facebook, Intuit, FanSnap, and Yahoo, where she built and led teams that created innovative consumer and enterprise products. She also worked on the corporate development team at Autodesk, driving M&A integration and strategy initiatives. She has a BS in computer science from the University of Hertfordshire and an MBA from the University of Oxford. Welcome to the show, Samantha. I'm so excited to have you on.
Thanks so much, Jennifer. It's really delightful to be here. Thanks so much for the invitation.
Sure, great. So let's get started. Sam, as a woman in tech, can you share with us your career journey and how you got to where you are today?
Absolutely. It definitely was not a straight line by any means. I could never have imagined becoming, even a product manager or a GM or a COO when I started out my career. I really started out thinking that I would have a career in the arts. So I started out at art college, focused on art and English literature. But very quickly realized that that was not going to be my journey just by observing the talent around me. And so started looking for a new career. And, my discoveries eventually took me to becoming a software engineer. Really that was the inspiration there was just wanting to work globally and being able to have a career that would take me around the world. So started out as a software engineer, spent about 8 years as an engineer, had a fantastic journey on that path. But during that time, spent a lot of time with customers and seeing how business decisions were made, and decided to make the leap over to the business side. So then moved to become a product manager, also for technology companies. So keeping my connection with being a software engineer, but really focused on the customer, on business strategy, as well as actually designing and building products. And was in product for over 10 years before then becoming the general manager of the surveys business at SurveyMonkey, which took me to more of a cross-functional leadership role across all of the functions for that business. And then most recently onto my current role, which is COO of Poppulo. Again, very cross-functional role. So lots of changes in that journey. And really just, a reflection of my commitment to ongoing learning, as well as, being committed to step up and take new challenges. But it's also a reflection of how the industry has really changed over the course of my career, and new opportunities and types of roles have been created throughout that time, opportunities that I could never have imagined. So, started off from, with a very different perspective on what my career would be to where I am today.
That's amazing. So, I think we are seeing in IT, the business side is very important just as much as the technical side. You can't have just one or the other. I think both have to go hand in hand. And we're seeing that transition happen, over the last couple of years.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I would say, especially, over the last few years, we've all been through this major transformation, and look at how we've all worked, look at how businesses have transformed, and opportunities have, really had to be created along with that. And, if you are in a technology role, the customer you were building for or the business that you were building within has had to change dramatically over that time. And so really staying connected to customers and having a deep understanding of your business is really important to make sure that you're innovating in the right areas.
Completely agree. Very, very good change of roles for you to bring you to a CEO, COO position, which is amazing. So, obviously you've had a lot of confidence in your career, and that's what's got you to where you are. What are some ways for tech companies to really for women to show up and gain confidence in the workplace? Because that's an area that's really lacking.
Yes, I would say that, I would say I was a late bloomer in terms of confidence, right? I mean, I definitely started out coming from the UK, which is a very different work culture than the US, but also being, a woman within technology, I really didn't always feel confident. I have had, imposter syndrome as much as anybody else, and I've
Mhm.
definitely spent a lot of time wanting to make sure I was the expert before raising my hand or really speaking up or stepping up to take a challenge. So I would say that the biggest skill or kind of the transformative mindset that really made that step change for me was this realization that the best thing I could do was become comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? And
Yeah.
become comfortable with the fact that I had to step outside of my comfort zone, and really understanding what it meant for me to be able to make that leap. And it's going to look different for everybody. But for me, the real transformative thought was, understanding that in many situations, the absolute worst outcome of me sort of learning on the fly might be that I would have to raise my hand and say that I needed somebody's help, or that I needed to sort of acknowledge that I was really learning, or
Hmm.
acknowledge that I didn't have the answer, right? And simply something as simple as saying, that's a great question. I'll get back to you on that, right? And
Hmm.
understanding that that is perfectly okay. And that
Hmm.
actually having this growth mindset, a beginner's mindset, um, creates the opportunity for others to step in and help you. And I think as human beings, we all want to be of use and of service to others. And so actually opening the door for other people to support you in your learning opportunity or in your moment of discomfort is
Hmm.
actually something that the rest of the team perhaps welcomes, right? So I would say, really figure out what it means for you. How are you going to feel when you're in that moment of discomfort? And think about ways that you can flip the perspective on your head and really understand that perhaps you're feeling excitement about a learning opportunity, or that you're creating opportunities for other people to help you in your development. So, number one, I think, would be change your perspective and figure out how you can reframe those moments of discomfort so that they become more comfortable for you. And then I think it's really about finding those opportunities that create that balance between your ability to leverage your comfort zone as well as stretching you a little bit outside of your comfort zone. So there are many things that and many opportunities that open up within any organization, right? You can look at things like publishing articles. You can run local meetups for people within your area of domain expertise. You
Hmm.
can think about running brown bag lunches, setting up hackathons. You can think about mentoring other people, or, mentoring interns, for example. There are many opportunities where you can get this balance of leveraging a skill that you already have, as well as sort of stretching yourself to learn new skills. Um, People often have reticence about speaking publicly, for instance. So, you can think about a baby step there. It may be easier for you to join a panel, which is a
Hmm.
safer start than kind of speaking alone. So I think, you really need to figure out what are the areas or the ways in which you want to grow. What are the situations where you want to gain confidence? And then look for some of these kind of like baby steps that, as I said, leverage a skill that you have, but then push you a little bit. But most importantly, the most important thing is reframing it in a positive way for yourself, and also looking for the people who are around you within that situation who are really on hand to support you and to make sure that you come out of that experience having a positive experience and having developed new skills, because there are always people who are on hand to support you in any way.
That is great, great advice. I love that you said, first of all, you have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable because things are going to change constantly in our industry. And so you can, as soon as you get comfortable, you can kind of count on that things are going to change. It's not going to be the same tomorrow.
Yep.
So that's really important. And then perfection, throw it out the door, right?
Right.
You need to be able to say, I will find out, get back to you, be true to your word, and find out and get back to them. So you don't need to know everything, and then create, this group of champions that are around you that can help you and support you for your needs. So I
Absolutely.
love all your advice. Great advice. So what are some of the ways tech companies can be more inclusive of women?
Oh my goodness. I mean,
Hmm.
it starts at the top and it goes all the way down to the
Right.
bottom. I think that, SurveyMonkey was a great example in terms of absolute commitment to 50-50 representation at every level of the
Hmm.
organization. So board was 50-50, the executive team were 50-50, and really scrutinizing the gender and diversity balance all the way through the organization and
That's
really
great.
holding managers accountable to not only recruiting a diverse team, but making sure that we were scoring the employee experience and asking the team for feedback in terms of whether they felt included, whether they felt a sense of belonging, and every manager was able to reflect on those scores and partner with the people team to create an action plan. At every single time we asked the team for feedback. So I think you have to build it into the organizational structure. You have to build it into repeatable processes whereby you're measuring the employee experience and making sure that there is accountability for all people managers, top to bottom. But then I think that there are things that may or may not typically come to mind. So things like a training stipend or partnering with these boot camp programs or other quick start programs for women who may not have had access to a technical education or maybe making a switch from other fields. There are fantastic quick start and boot camp programs designed at aiming to get women into a technology role within
Hmm.
3 to 4 months of focused training, and
Hmm.
organizations can really partner with those programs, both as kind of like a recruiting opportunity or as essentially, doing more project-based work where people can be seconded into the organization.
Hmm.
Um, Mentorship and allyship is something that everybody can do on an individual basis. You don't have to be a people manager to mentor another woman who is
Hmm.
earlier in her career or making a switch into your field. This is something that you can do on a one-to-one peer basis and just make yourself available and make it known that this is something that you might offer to women in the field. And then allyship is something that we can all practice, within our next meeting, right? Within the next hour, you can jump into a meeting and really focus on, are women's voices present in the room? So are there
Hmm.
actually women invited to the table? And are they being given time to speak? Are their opinions being solicited? And if not, you can make a change, right? We
Hmm.
can all take small actions that have this impact. And then finally, as I said, it's the small things around the environment, things like scheduling, making sure that if you are a people leader, that you're being considerate of people's needs around childcare, and not only for women, it's about expecting men, to
Hmm.
actually be forefront and present about their parenting, their need for time for parenting, making sure that we have facilities in the office that are supportive of, both parents. So as I said, so many things. I really do think that we as individuals, as I said, can do things in our very next meeting, but we also have a voice as employees. And so
Hmm.
we can all, raise the need for inclusivity, not just of women, but of everybody. So use
Everybody.
your
Right.
voice, and really, start to make it known that if you feel there's a gap, then reach out to your leadership team and make it known that this is a gap and you want to be part of the solution.
I love that. I love all the things that you talked about for being inclusive. And it's not just for women. I completely agree. It's for everybody. Everybody needs a voice because when you hear that voice, you're going to get that diversity. You're going to get that thought leadership. You're going to get that different perspective that you didn't have before. So I think that's very important. And mentorship is critical. I think, you hit the nail on the head by saying, mentorship needs to be in every organization.
Hmm.
Both there are mentors and mentees, and some kind of a matchmaking between them to help them grow and get to their goals is very important. So great job. So you know that communication is critical in the workplace. We talk about that all the time. Can you tell us why is that and how does it drive organizational alignment and business impact?
Yeah, I mean, communication is just absolutely critical because it really drives two key things for the whole team, right? First of all is the employee experience. And secondly, it really enables employees to perform, right? And to do their best work. So, focused on experience, really providing and communicating the engaging and relevant information that is going to enable workers to better understand things like your culture, right? The core values of how you want people to show up, the key strategic initiatives, OKRs, right? The
Hmm.
key business activities, what you expect of them in terms of community participation and workplace events. Like it all drives a sense of connectedness, especially so importantly for remote or hybrid workers, right? This
Mm.
sense of an ongoing cadence where you can share all of this information very predictably in a multitude of channels so that people can engage in it, whether they're in the office, whether they're on a mobile phone or whether they're sitting at a remote desk,
Mhm.
making sure that all of that context about who we are as an organization, how we think about people showing up, opportunities for people to connect to the rest of the team, it's so important for helping people feel connected. Especially given the transformation that we've been through. And then, just in terms of performance, obviously there's a focus on making sure that you can get really timely and insightful operational information so that people have access to the current policies, um, updates on new processes, giving them access to training, telling them about their role responsibilities, how their team is working together. The communication can really not only accelerate learning for employees, but it can help reduce onboarding time. And it really drives adoption and can accelerate real transformational initiatives that the company is trying to reduce. So by enabling, focusing on communication for performance, you're enabling people to do their best work. Communication for
Mhm.
experience means that people are connected. And at Popular, we've really seen the direct business impact of this, right? So through our studies, we know that if employees are engaged and they feel connected and they understand how to work, the top quartile companies are actually 20% more profitable, right? They
Mm.
see like 40% lower attrition and absenteeism, right? There's 60% less turnover. So communication is fundamental not only for the employee, but you actually see it absolutely reflected in the outcomes for the organization as well. And it's obviously a dialogue, right? It's the company really understanding how they engage people in the key initiatives and making sure that everybody has focused, but it's the employees or also feeding back to the organization what it is they need to hear from an employee experience perspective. So it's a two-way dialogue and an
Mhm.
ongoing conversation.
Yeah, communication is so critical, and you outlined it so well. And just for people who are listening, it is really critical because it changes that bottom line, which
Mhm.
is really important for any organization. So, keeping your employees communicated, providing their information at their fingertips as they need it, creating that two-way dialogue, very, very, very important, because then they feel engaged. And like you said, they're better retention, better profitability, just a better working environment, better culture, all of those things. So great. I love that. So, Samantha, what has been your biggest challenge in your career and how have you overcome it?
Yeah, interesting question. I really had to think about this one. I
Mm-hmm.
think there are a few things. Um, Firstly, I would say that, I was probably one of my biggest sort of challenges in my career,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it
Mm-hmm.
was my mindset. As I said before, thinking about confidence, I realized that I limited myself somewhat with my belief that I had to be an expert or that I had to
Mm-hmm.
check all of the boxes before stepping up to take an opportunity. I really learned by doing, and I think I really made a step change, as I said, by reframing that
Mm-hmm.
moment around the lack of confidence, but also by building up my group of key advisors who I could trust to give me an objective opinion on how I was doing or whether I should pursue a particular opportunity. And it really wasn't, those key advisors who were just going to pump me up and tell me to go do something, and I was going to be amazing. It was really the people who were going to give you an honest no, or like not yet, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or, maybe there's a different opportunity as well as the yes. So I think it is, surrounding yourself with those key advisors who are just going to hold a bit of a mirror up to you,
Mm-hmm.
and sort of help you choose the right path. I would say the other thing, the biggest challenge, I'm English working in the US. I was a woman, a minority in the technology field. And so I was out of my culture. As I said, I was in the gender minority, and I was really conscious of that. And, I really had to work hard to understand how decisions are made differently and
Mm-hmm.
how power and responsibility flowed differently as I navigated into a new work culture. And it took me a while, honestly. And what I understood was that, key decisions are not always made during the big meeting, right?
Mm-hmm.
I always had this sense that, a set of leaders go into a room, ponder a big decision, align and sort of come out having made the decision. It took me a while to understand that stakeholders are actually influenced in many ways before
Mm-hmm.
they even get into the room, right?
Mm-hmm.
And before they get into critical conversations. So I really had to work on develop my point of view, identify who it was that I needed to influence, and then really understand how to influence them. Some people are influenced by storytelling, others by data, others by images. And so just sort of, start to look at the leadership in your organization and see, how are they influenced? How might you be able to influence them and really connect with the bigger challenges that they're facing, and, be a part of their solution.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then finally, I would just say storytelling, right? I think I have a very mathematical brain. I can be somebody who's very data driven. And as I started out my career, I was very much somebody who went away, figured out the answer, and then just presented kind of like the right answer to people. And it
Mm-hmm.
took me a while to understand that I needed to have this ability for storytelling. And it's
Mm-hmm.
so important because people want to know the why behind your point of view, right? You
Mm-hmm.
have to take them on a journey to reach that same conclusion. And so it was really important to practice the art of storytelling. So again, use your team, bounce, your narrative off your colleagues, practice building decks or narratives with data. And practice is really the only way to get better at this one. But storytelling is incredibly important, as you're aligning people to your perspective, and really influencing people to focus and drive towards a particular outcome.
That's great. I love that, you were very conscious of the things that you were doing and you came up with strategic ways to overcome them. I
Mm,
love that because it wasn't just like haphazard, it was very thoughtful. very mindful.
Mhm.
And changing your own mindset was one of your biggest challenges, and that I can see that with a lot of women. We have negative Nancy in there telling
Yep.
us all the wrong things, and
Yep.
so that happens.
Yes.
So yeah, that's great. And then I'm really curious to understand a little bit more about, the culture difference between the UK and the US. What do you see in business as the biggest culture difference? Because, you mentioned that you had to adjust and how decisions were made and they're different, and storytelling is definitely a big part of it. But what was like your first impression of the biggest difference between the UK culture in business and the US culture in business?
Yeah, I mean, I have to caveat that with the fact that, I haven't worked in the UK for 26 years. So,
Hmm.
things may be very
Right,
different
different,
now.
yeah,
And
but
and
just from your
obviously I was,
perspective.
at a very different level. But I would say that, coming to the US, I felt um, very empowered to direct my own work, to
Mm,
choose my own priorities, and also to choose how I worked. And that was something that I really wasn't used to. In the
mhm.
UK, I was much more used to somebody giving me very
Guiding,
specific
yeah.
requirements, right? And very
Mm,
specific outcomes and a very specific timeline. Whereas in the US, I was just given much more of a goal or an outcome, and left, with a lot of leeway in terms of how I worked and how I actually came to the solution. So it was quite unsettling and unnerving in the beginning, but then, ultimately extremely liberating, right? And I think
yes.
really reflects kind of how I like to work with my teams today in terms of getting everybody aligned on the goal, what it is that we're trying to achieve, but then really leveraging the creativity of the team and all of the good ideas that come out of a diverse set of people in terms of how you're actually going to achieve that outcome, obviously within a set of constraints.
That's great. Wow. That's so different. I could see that that's an adjustment in itself when you're used to being guided, and then you're given the goal and the outcome and saying, okay, go get it. And you're like, okay, where do I begin? But then it is empowering and it is invigorating because now the solution is all yours and you have a blank slate to work with. So that's really cool.
Absolutely.
So, how do you make remote work in today's world? And can you create a culture connection and social moments by working remotely?
Yeah, I mean, it is extremely challenging, and I think
Mhm.
it's going to look different for every individual, every team, and every organization, right? I mean, I think we one of the great things about this new way of working is that we all get to show up in the way that works for us,
Mhm.
right? But yes, it is absolutely challenging. So, just for context, I work from home in California. There's nobody else on the team who's close to me, so I'm really completely remote until I travel to one of the offices. So I think it is being conscious in terms of how you spend your time, right? I think
Mhm.
that there are all things that we need to do week in, week out, and we can become quite limited in terms of our scope of in terms of
Mhm.
the people that we meet, right? So I could just spend time with the same 20 people every single week. And so you
Mhm.
have to be very conscious about managing your schedule and reaching out and setting aside time so that you're actually connecting to other people that you
Mhm.
wouldn't normally meet in your day-to-day business, but also asking people for, things like brown bags or other group meetings that you could join just to listen in so that you can get broader context. And you as the individual really need to own this and make sure that you're being very proactive in terms of broadening scope.
Mhm.
Um, but then I think it is also, again, giving people, making sure that you have time free on your calendar so that people can do the reverse, right? So at our latest town hall, I told the entire company, put time on my calendar. I'm here to listen, right? And
Mhm.
making sure that I have time set aside for people just to show up. And I show up not just around business outcomes, I bring my whole self to work and I show up as a human being. So I'm really intent on getting to know people. What interests them? What do they do at the weekend? listening about their family. I start off every time I meet somebody by really trying to understand who they are as a person.
Mhm.
Then there are things like, joining different Slack channels, and deliberately joining the ones that are about humor and music and sort of those softer sides of the organization where again we get to know each other as human beings. And then there are just kind of like scheduled time for fun, right? So whether it is just sort of, us all having a coffee moment together and sort of talking about our weekend, setting up time that really isn't business focused, it is just about that group connection and trying to find ways where you could potentially have local meetups. So you're not going into an office, but maybe you're all trying to get together for lunch, you're going for a hike. So all of these ways, but as I said, it's going to look different for everybody and every organization. And I think that that's the fantastic thing about this time, right? We have all got to reimagine this. And there is no one size fits all playbook anymore. We all have a voice. We all have a way to influence how we connect to each other in this world. So I'm super open to any suggestion that comes from our team in terms of how we can do things differently. Because as you said, things are only going to continue to change.
Yeah, no, that's great. I love the things that you said because you're so thoughtful about what you're doing. And that's very important because if you're not thoughtful and you just go through your day just haphazardly, doing your work, you will not achieve that culture and connection and social moments that we're looking for. So that's really great. And take ownership for yourself and say, okay, what am I missing in this environment and how do I create it? And that's when you said you're really open to listening. That's awesome because, we really need to do more of that. And in my company, I created that culture that anybody could talk to anybody at any time. It was
Yeah.
just like, give a quick message on Teams and say, hey, I need to chat with you. And then that person makes that time and says, okay, I can chat at 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
And then just start out being personal and understand that person. Just like you said, you want to know about their weekend, you want to know about who they are and what they do, and just be really interested and be curious. I think those are very, very key places to
Yes.
be.
Yes. Curiosity is such a great word. Well, I
Mhm.
think that, with being scheduled on these sort of video
Mhm.
calls such a lot of the time,
Back to
these
back. Yeah.
things can become very transactional. And so I
Mhm.
think the key is remain curious, really remain curious and create space for other people
Yes.
to
Yes.
to be curious too and to show up as who they are.
Creating space is so important because then you can really start to think. When I'm just running from one call to the next and I'm doing a meeting after meeting after meeting, I don't have time to even open up my brain to think more.
Yeah.
And so when you have that space, that's what does it. So great, great advice. I can't even say enough about that. So here's a selfish question, Samantha, because I love to travel
Mm.
and I want to keep adding to my bucket list. So, where is your most favorite place that you've traveled to and why?
I'm fortunate to have traveled many places,
Hmm.
but I would say that Croatia. Have you been to Croatia?
No, but I have heard lots of great things. So,
Yes.
it's going on my list.
Yes, it is. Croatia is fantastic. I mean, it is, a mix of everything. There's beach, there are islands, there's the ocean, and there's history. So Dubrovnik and Split are really the two just incredible cities within Croatia. There's just so much history there. I mean, Dubrovnik is a really ancient city
Mhm.
that was very scarred by the Croatian War of Independence in
Mhm.
1991, and so it is kind of this real juxtaposition of sort of modern day with ancient history, and then Split is just mind blowing. I really could not get over Split. I mean, it was founded
Mm.
in this I think at the second or the third century BC.
Wow. Wow.
So it's really ancient. There are marble streets, so you're actually walking on the same streets as Romans. There's incredible palace. So it's just an amazing, amazing country. And, there is history that I can remember, right? I remember the War of Independence. And so it's just amazing. It's visually stunning, wonderful people, and just fascinating, absolutely fascinating to explore. So I highly recommend it.
Oh my gosh, I'm just so excited. I am definitely adding it because what you describe sounds just amazing, and I'm sure you experienced that amazingness.
Yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
one of those countries, definitely, every single turn, there's something you did not expect, and it's
Mhm.
all just visually amazing. And as I said, the people are just phenomenal.
That's
It's really
amazing.
great.
Yeah, I love that. Well, thank you for that, Samantha. This was such a pleasure and an honor to talk to you. You have so many great insights. You're so thoughtful, just an amazing person. So thank you, thank you, thank you. If you can share with our listeners how they can get a hold of you.
Yes, you can find me on LinkedIn. Just
Okay,
search for my profile and you can reach out. Thank you so much for
sounds
your kind
great.
words.
Thank you. You're awesome. Thank you, Samantha.
Thanks, Jennifer. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to Tech in the Right Direction. Please take a minute to subscribe or follow so that you never miss an episode. Also, don't forget to like, share, and comment. Thank you. See you next week.
From IT skill enhancements to end user adoption training, Directions Training is your resource to help optimize the effectiveness of your technology investments. Over 500,000 students have taken advantage of our wide selection of technology and business training solutions, covering the most popular applications today, such as Microsoft 365, Azure, Windows 10, and more. As a podcast listener, we invite you to take advantage of an exclusive offer. Receive 30 days of free access to our Microsoft official curriculum on-demand courses for IT professionals or end users. Visit us at www.directionstraining.com/podcast to claim this offer today. Hurry, this offer is only available for a limited time. Success is a journey. Ask for directions.